William Walker Atkinson's The Mystery of Sex, or Sex Polarity. Chapter 8 was Satirism. This is Chapter 9, Higher Phases of Sex. In the preceding chapter, we stated the true and only function of sex on the physical plane, namely, the procreation and reproduction of the species. But we did not mean to imply that this particular plane was the only one upon which the sex principle manifests. On the contrary, sex manifests upon every plane of life and being in countless variety of forms of expression. But upon whatever plane it may manifest, the principle of creative activity, generation or regeneration, production or reproduction, creation or recreation, is present and active. There are many other purposes than that of the begetting of young, for which the male and female sex activities meet, combine, commingle, and unite. On the vital, mental, and spiritual planes, the union of the two elements of sex occurs, with the result of calling into being new activities, elements, and manifestations. Therefore, those who, seeing the perverted conditions connected with the ordinary sexual relations in our civilization, pronounce all sex impure, and who lead the lives of ascetics and who avoid the company of the other sex, make a great mistake. The man and the woman have much to give to and receive it from each other, many other planes of union than that ordinarily recognized. In the first place, there is unquestionably existent the peculiar vital force or energy, generally called a vital magnetism, which has its features and phases of sex. It is most difficult to describe the nature of vital magnetism, but its presence may be realized from actual experience and observation. It is a fact known to all occultists that each person has his or her individual personal atmosphere or magnetism, which affects those coming into contact with the person. Some persons depress those with whom they come in contact, while others stimulate them. Some have a tendency to weaken physically those around them, while some are so full of vitality that others actually draw upon the surplus stock and absorb the vital energy of such persons. There are vital vampires, as well as vital radiators. The phenomena of vital magnetism are well known to those who have made a general study of the subject, and we shall not attempt to go into the matter at length in this place. It is not so well known, however, that there is a particular phase of this vital magnetism which has much to do with the relations of the two sexes. This may be called sex magnetism, and its poles are found in the opposite sexes, the male being the positive and the female the negative. It is this activity of the sex magnetism that has much to do with drawing together the two sexes. Each sex feels the desire to participate in the magnetism of the opposite sex, the individual magnetism of persons, of course, varying in their degree of attractiveness. Some persons are so charged with sex magnetism that they tend to attract and draw to themselves persons of the opposite sex. There are many men and women who do not possess particularly attractive features, form, or manner, who nevertheless attract the other sex to them in a manner astonishing to those not in the secret. Excuse me. There have been men, such as the celebrated bigamists of police history, who have seemed to attract women as the flame does the moth. And there have been women who have exerted a strong attraction over nearly all men who come into their circle of influence. Nearly every reader of these lines will recall cases of this kind in his own acquaintance or from his general experience. While this sex magnetism in such exceptional cases may work harm, it is also a fact that it exerts a strong influence for good in the majority of cases in which its effects are not neutralized by sexual excesses on the physical plane, such as we have indicated in our preceding chapter. The union and combination of the two currents of sex magnetism of persons of the opposite sexes who are harmonious and congenial tends to invigorate and vitalize both persons. Sex is always creative, and the sex magnetism tends to create new vitality in the persons whose magnetism is harmonious. The ascetic, or the person of either sex who avoids the company of the opposite sex, is apt to become withered, devitalized, and impoverished in nerve force and blood supply. Such people fly in the face of nature and suffer the consequence. It is a necessity of normal life for persons of opposite sexes to mingle in each other's company, and to receive and give the magnetic benefits resulting therefrom. It is the union of the sex magnetism which draws the majority of married people together originally. Each feels a glow when in the presence of the other. Each feels the revitalization that takes place when they are together. Each feels better, stronger, happier, and more vital when in the other's company. No proof of this is needed, for the experience of nearly every person will corroborate the statement. Then why, you may ask, does this not continue with all married people? The answer is very simple. Married people too often dissipate and waste the sex magnetism by the unnatural sex indulgences of which we have spoken. Very often these practices or abuses of married life cause a depolarization, or reversal of the sex magnetism, which results in creating a condition of repulsion between the married pair, in place of the attraction which originally existed. This regrettable condition may be changed, however, and the normal conditions restored if the couple will turn away from the perverted conditions which they have maintained and replace them with natural, clean, wholesome relations of comradeship, companionship, and mutual harmony. Married men and women can be of the greatest use to each other if they will but maintain the proper kind of sex relationship. Instead of the attraction growing less, it will actually increase, and the honeymoon will last over their mutual lifetime. Each will strengthen and devitalize the other, instead of weakening and devitalizing one or the other, or even both, which latter deplorable condition we see in evidence in so many cases of people who have failed to grasp the true meaning of the marriage relationship. On the mental plane, we also find the manifestation of the sex principle, not only in the direction we have indicated in the opening chapters of this book, but also in the direction of the inspiration and incitement to active thinking that two persons of opposite sexes exert upon each other if they be in proper harmony. It will be found in the majority of cases of successful men and women in the prominent fields of human endeavor that the successful man or the successful woman is inspired by the love or mental sympathy, or both, of some person of the opposite sex. Too often, alas, this person of the opposite sex may be someone other than the married companion of the person in question, but this is because the original bond of unity has been allowed to become a burden and a hindrance by reason of the lack of understanding, of the true sex relationship. Lack of understanding of the true sex relationship, the mental rapport of the two persons having been allowed to perish. One or both will instinctively seek for the inspiration or rapport of sympathy from some other person of the opposite sex. We hear much of affinities in these days, and the majority of persons think that these attractions between persons of the opposite sexes always arise from pure lust or physical attraction. But such is not the case, for in many cases the parties to these entanglements are originally attracted by mental characteristics and qualities. There is a subtle attractive force attached to the quality of mental understanding, of one person by another. Every mind instinctively seeks and reaches out for understanding, and in too many cases there is none of this quality to be found in those in whom it should be quite in evidence. The result is that when the man or woman is brought into contact with one of the other sex who can and does understand, there is sure to be an attraction and a desire for each other's company, which often leads to wrecked homes and ruined lives. That so many of these affinity attachments afterward degenerate into purely physical or even lustful relationship is only another proof of the fact that the prostitution of the natural sex instinct to purposes other than its normal function is sure to work evil. Let us quote a few lines from a writer in the magazines, whose words carry with them a sense of realization of the normal and desirable conditions which should exist between husband and wife on the mental plane. The writer says, "The more things that a man and woman mutually love, the greater will be their love for each other. The more things in which they are mutually interested, the greater will be their interest in each other. The object of their mutual interest may be children, work, books, hobbies, other people, or what not. It matters not so much just what. The thing is that there should be outside things, many of them in which the two should be mutually interested. There should be outside planes upon which the two minds should be able to meet. Heed this lesson, you men and women. Read between the lines of these hastily written pages, for throughout it all runs a vein of truth that may bring happiness to many of you, that may tend to prevent a further breach between some of you who have already drawn apart while treading the path that God intended that you two people should tread together, if at all, side by side, shoulder to shoulder, eyes level with eyes, looking out upon the world together, and seeing together the same scenes of that wondrous land through which you are now journeying." Marriage, true marriage, means comradeship above everything else. And unless this be had, then the essence of the thing is missing. And nothing, or naught, but the husk and unsatisfying outer materials remain. And this is a part of what a quarter-century of wifehood has taught me. A quarter-century of mingled prosperity and adversity, of pleasure and pain, of ups and downs, of sunshine and shadow, of storm and calm, all of which I have tried to face with confidence and faith, inspired always by the knowledge that by my side was one who both understood and was understood. And by reason of it all, I know that I have gained that without which all would have been lost, but which gained causes me to feel that all through which I have lived, yes, all, bitter and sweet alike, was well lived and worthwhile. Comradeship in marriage. There is a plane still higher than that of mind, in which sex is manifest. The spiritual plane. While it is impossible in a book of this kind to consider this phase of the matter in detail, we wish to say that man and woman mount the ladder of spiritual attainment hand in hand, and by each other's help. Akin to the inspiration on the mental plane is this higher source of help, sympathy, and encouragement of this higher life. On the spiritual plane is to be found the highest form and phase of love. Love which is concerned with the evolution and unfoldment of the soul of the loved one, rather than with the generation of the species. To many, this form of love must of necessity seem as but a faint dream or the idlest fancy. But to those who have caught even a faint glimpse of its reality and existence, it causes all else to fade into insignificance. But the higher the height, the greater the fall therefrom, and mortals must ever guide against allowing the perverted instincts of the physical plane from entering into the paradise of a love of this kind, and dragging down into the depths a love whose true home is on the heights. If such a love as this has come to you, treasure it carefully. Guard it jealously from the encroachments of the lower senses. Preserve it ever as the pearl of great price. It is not permitted to speak in general terms to the general public about this manifestation of sex on the spiritual plane. It dwells in a world of its own, sheltered from the profane gaze of the vulgar and materialistic crowd. As Emerson says, every man's words, who speaks from that life, must sound vain to those who do not dwell in the same thought on their own part. I dare not speak for it. My words do not carry its august sense. They fall short and cold. Only itself can inspire whom it will. But it is real. To those who have experienced it, the one real thing in a world of illusions. Chapter 10, the final chapter, will be regeneration. Allie.